What's something all Americans understand but non-Americans don't, leading to unfair judgment? I have family back in Scotland, and commutes work so differently in America. Firstly, I had to explain that it isn't unusual to have a 1-hour driving commute both ways with no public transport available. Then, when I moved closer, I had to explain that it's possible to live 2 miles from my job in a smallish town and still have a driving commute because I can't walk safely. There are no safe hard shoulders or footpaths, and the main road doesn't have any way to cross safely. Instant garbage disposals. I've never seen a conversation where I felt like the non-American truly understood the function and use cases of this device. Arguments about them always seem to be coming from two disjoint realities. How difficult it is to get around if you don't have a car. Not everywhere, but there are some places that are just impossible. No footpaths, bike lanes, decent public transport. The ubiquity of cars. Grew up in North America, now in UK. If you don't have a car, you're probably not working or getting groceries. Nearest grocery store to me growing up was a 30-minute drive. No buses. Here the nearest shop is 10 minutes walk. AC is a must in some states. You'd literally get heat stroke in your own house in places like Arizona where it can get 110 F43C. That the TV programs we're exporting to you aren't a particularly good indicator of what it is like here. The Midwest gets all extremes when it comes to weather, and it shocks the international students every time. We get well below 0 Fahrenheit and above 100 Fahrenheit, and we get tornadoes, droughts, earthquakes, wildfires. Oh, and the Great Lakes are actually the size of a seas. They're just not salt water. Leaning on stuff when standing is great. We do this thing where our full interaction is, "How's it going? Hey," continues about day. Personal space is more important here than in other countries. Making the line shorter will not make the wait any shorter. No one is going to cut the line, and if they do, just calling them out will usually fix the situation. Stop dry humping me in line, you jackals. There is plenty of space here, so enjoy it. The subject of food is unhinged. Was reading comments a while back. American was talking shit about beans and toast. I'm assuming an English person replied, coming from someone who eats Snicker fucking salad. It's not often I bust out laughing at comments, but Snicker fucking salad did the trick. Before you Googled, yes, it's legit, lol. It doesn't matter what your house is made of. There's not much that will stop an EF4 or 5 tornado from absolutely destroying everything in its path. I've seen so many Europeans mock us because we should have used stronger material. They think our buildings are held together by bubblegum and prayer. Having to pay to use the restroom. As an American, this concept is just baffling and feels unfair, but non-Americans don't get why it bothers us so much. Different U.S. states can have wildly different laws, infrastructure, and cultures. You won't see people casually carrying guns to Walmart in New Jersey. Some states have no sales tax, and all states have different amounts of sales tax. And Texans have a heat tolerance that surpasses many. Racism. Don't get me wrong. We should be judged. But our Euro cousins will then just turn around and say horrible shit and not realize it at all. I travel for work. Professional Americans are easily, it's not even close, the least racist demo you will find. There isn't a point in arguing this if you haven't worked internationally. European, Chinese, Indian, Australian, South America, it doesn't matter. It is apples and oranges. The idea that American is this weird racist place is only a belief held by young people in a bubble. You have no idea what actual racism looks like. I'm a Black American who spent about half of my childhood growing up abroad, and this has been true to my experience. They suck for sure, but I'll take dealing the good old boys back home over the folks overseas when it comes to racism. Some foreigners will treat you with more respect if they find out you're American or Canadian instead of African, but until that point, You might as well be a literal slave class to them if you're black. It's surreal to experience. And even aside from the racism, the colorism abroad goes hard. I love to travel and experience different cultures, but I'm also really fucking glad to come from a place that's a little more forward-thinking about this stuff, flawed as it is. Edit: since this is getting some attention, if you're reading this and you're another Black American, please don't let any of this discourage you from international travel if you were considering it. Aside from how freaky the racism got, it was worth the overall experience for sure, and I also met so many beautiful souls overseas. The sheer perspective and mental reorientation you can experience just by seeing firsthand how other cultures live cannot be understated. That shit made me a better person, and I fucking love humanity because of it. Most Americans don't have passports because the US is enormous and incredibly varied. So many of us travel in country for vacations because it's cheaper and more convenient. I always thought it was weird that people assume Americans don't travel intentionally because we are somehow arrogant or self-centered. It's just not affordable for everyone. Growing up, we only traveled where we could drive and only stayed overnight if we were staying with a relative or were camping. That water should be free at restaurants. We are carbon-based life forms, after all. We know that our health system is a mess. We just can't get the right legislation and representatives in office working to fix it. Well, judging by the TikToks I see of people losing their mind at American grocery stores, I have a list of things. Nobody buys cheese in a can. I literally have never bought that and rarely see it. Non-Americans love to show it like Americans eat cheese in a can. No, we don't. We don't consider Wonder Bread to be the finest bread in all the land. If we want nice hearty bread, we will go the bakery section of a nice supermarket or a standalone bakery. In these videos they'll say America has the worst bread, and show a grocery aisle of sliced sandwich bread, and then compare it to their nicest artisan loaves of bread. When Americans buy anything in a container that says family size or party size, it is meant for a large group of people or a long period or time or both. Europeans in particular cannot seem to wrap their heads around this one because I see people explain it to them daily and still the next week they'll say, "Oh my God, can you believe Americans drink a 5-gallon bottle of orange juice every day?" So maybe it's them that are the issue here, because I don't think any of these things are hard to understand. And yet. Also, we just go to the grocery store less frequently than many Europeans. Americans will typically go to the grocery store about once a week. Less if you live far from the store like I did in rural Nevada for a time. When we go to the store, it's not usually just for the night's dinner, or just for the next few days. We stock up. It's not all non-Americans, but for me, the big one is we're uncultured because we don't travel internationally. Like, the US is fucking massive. One day last year, I got a sunburn just doing yard work, while my coworker got 18 inches of snow. We're like 50 tiny countries that are tied together financially, even culturally. We're not a monolith. The US is more like the EU, where we share a currency and can travel without a passport, but we share a language, and even that is debatable in some cases. Stud and drywall construction is actually pretty legit. Inexpensive, reasonably tough, and easy to repair. A single-family home made of brick or stone would cost a goddamn fortune these days and is completely unnecessary for our climate and uses. We had a magnitude 7.1 earthquake here in Anchorage, population about 300,000 in 2018, not a single death. Earthquakes of similar magnitude in Eurasia can kill hundreds or thousands. For example, in 2016 a magnitude 6.2, roughly 1/10 the energy of a 7.1, killed nearly 300 people in Italy. The 7.8 in Turkey and Syria last year killed about 60,000. Lightwood framing is maligned as cheap by many non-Americans, but it's incredibly good at keeping people alive in earthquakes. It's resilient and can absorb a lot of energy before reaching catastrophic failure. And when it does fail, it doesn't bury people under tens of thousands of pounds of bricks, stone, concrete. Why we don't all speak multiple languages. This country is massive and, in most of it, chances are that 99% of the people within 100 miles of you speak English fluently as a first or second language. The fact is that there's just not much practical reason to learn Spanish, French, German, or something else for the vast majority of us. Example, I took 3 years of Arabic in undergrad. After I graduated 18 years ago, I have used it in day-to-day life maybe 5 times. I'm now completely out of practice and barely understand any of the language at all. From a practical perspective, I'd have been better off doing something else with my time. The size of our country is incomprehensible for Europeans. I can drive at 60 miles per hour for 7 hours and still be in the same fucking state. I had a UK salesman tell me once to just pop over to the coast to pick up a package because they couldn't ship to my state. I live in the middle of the country, ain't popping out to the coast for a box. He was absolutely flabbergasted that I'd have to take a plane for a lot of hours to get to either side of the USA. That when we are talking about eating foreign food, for instance let's eat Chinese, we don't mean the cuisine currently eaten by people in those foreign countries. We mean the cuisine at restaurants in our communities founded by immigrants from those countries, often a long time ago. Fettuccine Alfredo is not Italian food. It absolutely is, in our usage and the context we are speaking about. Similarly, when we borrowed the Italian word pizza, it became an English word and its definition changed to conform to our ideas about food. There are foods, an example, French bread pizza, that are correctly pizza when speaking English, and not pizza when speaking Italian, because although the English word pizza is a loanword from Italian, it is a different word in a different language and means what English speakers regard as pizza. It would only be incorrect if the adjective Italian was applied, because that then specifies to use the Italian sense. It's pretty hard to find a non-minimum wage job in the States without a car or reliable mode of transportation. Also, trains aren't really a thing outside of big cities and their surrounding commuter rails in nearby towns. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I remember the first cold snap we got. The Brazilian exchange student bought UGGs and came to school wearing them, and a miniskirt. She announced, "Thank God this is as cold as it's going to get." It was like early October at the time. I read about this a few days ago and caught myself doing at work today like, damn it, they were right. But standing in the door feels imposing. Leaning on the door jamb of my coworker's office just feels right. The amount of Brits who comment on pictures of canned whole chicken like it's a common staple in the US demonstrates this point very well. I grew up quite poor and never had it a day in my life. I remembered a news story about this, and it occurs to me that the attempts to design homes more resistant to tornado speed winds has moved away from an attempt at a material solution in favor of a solution based on the structure's shape, this one being a dome shape. To build a tornado-proof structure would apparently take something to the effect of 2 feet thick of reinforced steel with heavy F-doors like the ones on a military naval vessel and having 0 windows. So literally just building a house as a tornado shelter as opposed to building a house with a shelter room inside it. Once had a German professor ask the entire class to calm down and just wait to see what the school says when the warning on everyone's phones began to blast. Like, lady, I've lived here my entire life, and the sky just went from blue to black in 2 minutes. I'm getting TF out of here. I think people really underestimate the damage a tornado can do. It's actually kind of weird because the European equivalent to the US sales tax is higher pretty much everywhere compared to any US state. 20% to 25% are common. It's just lumped into the sticker price, so nobody cares. It's also sort of weird because consumption taxes are very regressive, that is, they hit poor people hardest. I may get downvoted for this, but I have had an electric bike instead of a car in the American South for 3 years, and it's nice because it goes fast enough that I can keep up with traffic without really sweating in my 4-mile 12-minute commute. I don't have to pay for car insurance or gas, and I get some fresh air first thing. Highly recommend for anyone is open to doing things a different way. I can give advice to. Still might not work in Florida or certain kinds of overdeveloped strip mall of highway nightmares, haha. I also might just be crazy because I'm the only person at my place of work who does this.